Have you ever watched someone dig their own grave with nothing but arrogance and a loud mouth? It's painful, but when the karma finally hits, it is the sweetest thing in the world. We were at 30,000 feet somewhere over the Atlantic when Alistair Kensington, a man whose suit cost more than my parents' house, decided to ruin a young black student's life just for sitting in first class. He thought he was the king of the world. He thought she was nobody. He mocked her hair, her clothes, and her very existence. But he didn't know one tiny catastrophic detail. He wasn't just yelling at a passenger, he was yelling at the owner of the plane. And what happened next? Let's just say you need to hear this. The air inside the first-class cabin of Flight 882, bound for Zurich from JFK, smelled of bergamot and expensive leather. It was that specific, sterilized scent of wealth that only exists in spaces where a ticket costs 5 figures. Marion Dubois adjusted the noise-cancelling headphones over her ears, pulling her oversized grey hoodie tighter around her frame. She was 22, though she looked younger, with her hair pulled back into neat braids and a face bare of makeup. To the untrained eye, or the prejudiced one, she looked like she had gotten lost on her way to row 45 in economy. She was curled up in seat 1A, the prime spot, scrolling through a PDF on her tablet titled Advanced Thermodynamics in Subsonic Aviation. The cabin was mostly empty, a sanctuary of silence until he arrived. Alistair Kensington didn't just walk onto a plane. He announced himself. He was a large man in his late 50s, with a face flushed pink from either high blood pressure or a pre-flight scotch in the lounge. He wore a bespoke navy suit that screamed Savile Row, and he carried a leather briefcase that looked like it had been cured in a smokehouse. He was on his phone barking orders at some terrified assistant on the other end. "I don't care what the projections say, Julian. Sell the damn asset. If the stock drops, it drops. I want liquidity by Monday." He ended the call with a violent tap and shoved the phone into his pocket. He stopped in the aisle, his eyes scanning the cabin for his seat, B. Then he saw Marion. His eyes didn't just land on her. They narrowed, performing a quick, judgmental audit. He looked at the scuffed sneakers on her feet. He looked at the hoodie. He looked at her skin. The grimace that formed on his face wasn't subtle. It was a visceral reaction of disgust, as if he had found a rat chewing on the upholstery. Alistair cleared his throat. It was a loud, wet sound designed to demand attention. Marion didn't move. She was deep in a paragraph about drag coefficients. Alistair stepped closer, looming over her. "Excuse me." Marion didn't hear him. Alistair's patience, already thin, snapped. He reached out and tapped the hard plastic shell of her seat, the vibration jarring enough to make Marion look up. She slid her headphones down to her neck, her expression calm but confused. "Yes," she asked. Her voice was soft, polite. "You are in the wrong seat," Alistair stated. It wasn't a question. It was a declaration of fact. Marion blinked. She looked at the digital display on the armrest. 1A. She looked back at Alistair. "I don't think so, sir. This is 1A. Alistair let out a short, incredulous laugh. He looked around the cabin, seeking an audience for this absurdity, but the other few passengers were busy ignoring him. He turned back to her, leaning in his voice, dropping to a patronizing sneer. "Listen, sweetheart. I know how this works. You probably snuck up here from coach to take a selfie for your little Instagram before the plane takes off. It's cute, but the adults are boarding now. NGO back to row. Whatever it is, 40-50. Marion stared at him. For a second, a flicker of amusement danced in her eyes. but she suppressed it. I'm ticketed for this seat, sir. If you're in 1B, you're right across the aisle. Ticketed. Alistair repeated the word like it was a bad joke. First-class tickets on this flight are $12,000. Are you telling me that you— He gestured vaguely at her entire being. Spent $12,000 to sit here. I didn't spend $12,000, Marion admitted honestly. Alistair smirked a predatory grin of victory. Exactly. Employee standby lottery winner. Or did you just slip past the gate agent while they were busy? He opened the overhead bin above her, seemingly looking for her luggage, but seeing only a small, battered backpack. Jesus, look at this. It's a locker room in here. Sir, please sit down, Marion said, her voice hardening slightly. You're blocking the aisle. I'm not sitting down next to a stowaway, Alistair bellowed. The volume of his voice finally drew the attention of the flight attendant, a seasoned woman named Seraphine, who had been prepping champagne in the galley. Seraphine hurried over, her professional smile tight. She recognized Alistair Kensington immediately. He was a frequent flyer, a Diamond Medallion member, and a known nightmare for the crew. He was the CEO of Kensington Logistics, a man who had once tried to get a pilot fired because the turbulence spilled his coffee. Mr. Kensington, Seraphine said, her voice soothing. Is there a problem? Yes, there is a problem, Seraphine. Alistair spat, pointing a thick finger at Marion. You have a security breach. There is a child in seat 1A who clearly doesn't belong here. I want her removed. Now. Seraphine looked at Marion. She paused. Unlike Alistair, Seraphine had seen the passenger manifest. She knew exactly who was in seat 1A. In fact, the entire crew had been briefed on the VIP in 1A during their pre-flight meeting. Mr. Kensington, Seraphine said, her tone dropping a degree in warmth. Ms. Dubois is in her correct seat. May I get you a glass of champagne? We are about to push back. Alistair looked as if Seraphine had slapped him. Excuse me, you're checking her ticket. Did you actually check it, or are you just afraid of causing a scene? I have checked the manifest, sir. Then the manifest is wrong. Alistair slammed his briefcase into seat 1B. I fly this route twice a month. The cabin is supposed to be for business professionals. Quiet. Exclusive. I have a merger to review. I cannot focus with street culture sitting 3 feet away from me. Marion turned her head, looking him dead in the eye. Street culture. You know what I mean? Alistair sneered. Loud music. Snacks everywhere. It's a disturbance. I paid a premium for an environment, and that environment does not include you. Seraphine stepped between them. Mr. Kensington, I must insist you take your seat. If you continue to raise your voice, we will have to discuss this with the captain. Alistair laughed, shaking his head. Oh, threaten me with the captain. I know the captain. I know the CEO of this airline. I've played golf with the VP of operations. Do not think for 1 second, Seraphine, that you have the authority to silence me. He finally sat down in 1B, but he didn't stop. He turned his body toward Marion, staring at her with intense hostility. Enjoy it while it lasts, he muttered loud enough for her to hear. Once we land, I'm filing a formal complaint. They'll audit how you got that ticket. Fraud, most likely. Stolen miles. Daddy's stolen credit card. Marion picked up her tablet again. She didn't look angry. She looked bored. Are you finished? She asked. I'm just getting started, Alistair warned. The fasten seatbelt sign chimed. The massive engines of the aircraft hummed to life, vibrating through the floorboards. The plane pushed back from the gate, the tarmac of JFK sliding away outside the window. For the first 20 minutes of the flight, the silence was heavy, like a physical weight. Marion had put her headphones back on, but she wasn't playing music. She was in transparency mode, listening to the ambient noise and to Alistair. Alistair was making a show of his importance. He had spread his papers out on his tray table, encroaching on the shared armrest space. He called Seraphine over every 5 minutes. "The champagne is warm. Replace it. This warm towel is too dry. Get another. Why is the Wi-Fi so slow? I'm trying to download a schematic." He was establishing dominance, a silverback gorilla in a suit, but his real target was the girl to his left. He couldn't stand that she was ignoring him. Men like Alistair Kensington needed to be feared or admired. Indifference was an insult. When the meal service began, the tension spiked. Seraphine approached with the menu. "Campagne du Bois. Welcome aboard again. May I start you with a drink?" "Perhaps the vintage Krug." Marion smiled warmly at Seraphine. "Just sparkling water with lime, please, Seraphine. Thank you." Alistair scoffed loud enough to be heard in the cockpit. "Sparkling water, of course. Probably doesn't know how to pronounce the wines." Marion ignored him. Seraphine turned to Alistair. "And for you, Mr. Kensington, Scotch, neat. And bring me the lobster thermidor, and tell the chef not to overcook it like last time." As Seraphine walked away, Alistair leaned across the aisle. The plane hit a pocket of turbulence, jostling the cabin. Alistair used the movement to accidentally knock Marion's elbow as she was typing on her tablet. "Oops," he said, zero sincerity in his voice. "Tight quarters. You know, usually people in these seats have work to do. Real work, not all homework." He gestured to her screen. "What is that, community college physics?" Marion sighed. She saved her document and turned off the screen. She rotated her body to face him. "It's a review of thermal efficiency in high-bypass turbofans. I'm checking the fuel consumption rates for the new Rolls-Royce Trent engines." Alistair blinked, surprised by the technical jargon, but he recovered quickly. "Oh, isn't that adorable? You memorized some Wikipedia words, trying to impress someone. Let me guess, you're an intern, fetching coffee for the engineers." "Something like that," Marion said dryly. "I hire engineers," Alistair bragged, fluffing his ego. "Top men, MIT, Stanford. They don't look like you. They wear suits, they speak properly. They understand that aviation is a serious business for serious people. It's not a hobby for diversity hires." The racism was no longer veiled. It was out in the open, ugly and naked. Marion's expression shifted. The boredom was gone, replaced by a steely coldness. "You seem very concerned with my credentials, Mr. Kensington. Why is that?" "Because standards matter." Alistair slammed his hand on the armrest. "I'm sick of seeing standards erode. Everywhere I go, I see people being let into places they didn't earn. Clubs, boardrooms, first-class cabins. It cheapens the experience for those of us who actually built the world." He pointed a finger at her chest, stopping just inches away. "You are what's wrong with this country. You think you're owed a seat at the table. But let me tell you something, little girl. You can wear the hoodie, you can sit in the seat, but you will never be one of us." Marion looked at his finger, then up at his face. "One of us. The elite," Alistair whispered. "The owners, the people who sign the checks." At that moment, Seraphine returned with the drinks. She saw Alistair's aggressive posture. Her face went pale. "Mr. Kensington, please keep your hands to yourself." "I didn't touch her," Alistair lied. "I'm just educating her on her place in the world." He grabbed his scotch from Seraphine's tray, his hand shaking slightly with rage. He took a large gulp. "You know what, I don't want to look at her anymore. Seraphine, move her." "I cannot do that, sir," Seraphine said firmly. "Then move me," Alistair demanded. "Put me in the cockpit for all I care. I am not spending 7 hours next to this affirmative action charity case." Marion stood up. She didn't stand up aggressively. She stood up smoothly, unbuckling her seatbelt with a click that sounded like a gunshot in the quiet cabin. She was tall, taller than she looked when seated. "Where are you going?" Alistair sneered. "Running to the bathroom to cry." Marion looked down at him. "No, Alistair. I'm going to talk to the pilot." Alistair laughed so hard, he nearly choked on his scotch. "The pilot? You think the pilot wants to talk to you? Go ahead. Go knock on the door. They'll arrest you for attempted hijacking. Go on. I want to see this." Marion adjusted her hoodie, picked up her phone, and walked toward the cockpit door. "She's actually doing it," Alistair cackled, looking around at the other passengers. "Can you believe the audacity? This is going to be good." Seraphine looked nervous. She reached out to stop Marion. "Ms. Dubois, you can't just—" Marion held up a hand, gently stopping Seraphine. "It's okay, Seraphine. Tell Captain Harrison I need a word. Tell him it's regarding the weight distribution in seat 1B. Alistair heard this and roared with laughter. "Weight distribution. Oh, that's rich. Go on, honey. Go get arrested." Marion stood by the cockpit door. Seraphine, looking conflicted and terrified, picked up the interphone to call the flight deck. The drama was about to leave the cabin and enter the stratosphere. Alistair Kensington poured himself another drink, convinced he had just won the game. He had no idea he was playing against the house. While Marion stood at the front of the cabin, speaking in hushed tones into the interphone handset, Seraphine had handed her Alistair Kensington, settled back into his seat with the satisfaction of a man who had just crushed a bug. He swirled the amber liquid in his glass, turning to the passenger across the aisle in 2B, a younger man in a grey suit who had been trying desperately to disappear into his noise-cancelling headphones. "You see that," Alistair gestured toward the front galley with his glass. "That is the problem with society today. No discipline, no respect for hierarchy. She actually thinks the captain is going to take her side." The man in 2B offered a weak, non-committal smile, terrified of engaging. "I just want to get to Zurich," he mumbled. "We'll get to Zurich," Alistair assured him, his voice booming. "But she won't. I give it 10 minutes. The captain will come out, take one look at her attire, realize she's hysterical, and have the marshals waiting at the gate. Hell, they might even divert to Gander to kick her off. I've seen it happen. I made it happen once in 2008 on a flight to Tokyo." Alistair chuckled a wet, rasping sound. "You have to assert yourself. If you let them in, they ruin the neighborhood. It's the same with real estate, and it's the same with first class." Up at the front of the plane, the dynamic was very different. Seraphine, the flight attendant, was trembling slightly. She had just watched Marion punch a code into the crew keypad, a code that flight attendants knew existed but rarely saw used. It was the owner board member override code. The cockpit door didn't just open, it was unlatched from the inside with immediate urgency. Captain James Harrison stepped out. Harrison was a legend in the airline, a silver-haired aviator with 30 years of commercial experience and a jawline that looked like it was carved from granite. He wore the 4 stripes of a captain on his epaulettes with immense dignity. Usually when a captain comes out to deal with a passenger dispute, they look annoyed. They look tired. They are thinking about the paperwork. Captain Harrison did not look annoyed. He looked concerned, deeply concerned. He stepped out of the flight deck, putting his cap on his head, adjusting the brim. He looked at Marion. Alistair, craning his neck from seat 1B, saw this. "Aha!" he shouted, unbuckling his seatbelt again. "Here we go, showtime!" Alistair stood up, ignoring the "fasten seatbelt" sign that was still illuminated due to the chop. He buttoned his suit jacket, preparing to accept the captain's apology for the inconvenience. He walked toward the front of the cabin, stopping just a few feet behind Marion and the captain. "Captain," Alistair announced, his voice projecting his self-importance. "Thank you for coming back. I am Alistair Kensington, Diamond Medallion member. I'm the one who raised the complaint." Captain Harrison didn't look at Alistair. His eyes were fixed on Marion. "Ms. Dubois," the captain said, his voice respectful, almost deferential. "We received the notification on the flight computer. Is everything all right?" Seraphine said there was a security concern. Alistair stepped in, literally physically cutting between Marion and the captain. "Yes, there is a security concern. This person is harassing me. She's sitting in a seat she clearly couldn't afford. She's been aggressive and she refuses to follow the cabin etiquette. I want her moved to economy or I want her restrained." Captain Harrison finally looked at Alistair. His expression was one of profound confusion, followed by a sudden, chilling realization. He looked at Alistair's red, angry face, then back at Marion, who was standing there with her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. "Sir," Captain Harrison said, his voice dropping an octave. "Please return to your seat. The seatbelt sign is on. I will not return to my seat until you deal with her." Alistair pointed a finger right in Marion's face. "She is a fraud. Look at her, she's a child playing dress-up. Check her ticket right now. I bet you it's fake." Marion looked at the captain. She didn't shout. She didn't cry. She spoke with a calm, terrifying precision. "Captain Harrison," Marion said, "Mr. Kensington seems to believe I am stealing a seat on this flight. He also seems to believe that his status as a Diamond Medallion member gives him the right to verbally abuse me, poke me, and demand my removal." "I didn't poke you, I tapped your chair," Alistair yelled. "Captain!" Marion continued, ignoring Alistair. "How is the fuel flow on the number 2 engine? I noticed a slight vibration variance in the logbook from the previous flight leg from Dubai." Alistair rolled his eyes. "Oh my God, here she goes again with the fake engineering talk. She's crazy, Captain. She's reading Wikipedia pages to sound smart. Arrest her." Captain Harrison stiffened. He looked at Marion with widened eyes. We adjusted the flow valve during the layover, Ms. Dubois. It's running within 0.5% efficiency now. How did you know about the Dubai log?" "Because I read the maintenance reports this morning," Marion said, "before I approved the flight plan." Alistair froze. The glass of scotch in his hand tilted dangerously. "Approved the flight plan." Alistair repeated the words, tasting like ash in his mouth. "What is she talking about? She's a student." "I am a student," Marion agreed, turning to look at Alistair. "I'm getting my master's in aerospace engineering at ETH Zurich, but that's my hobby, Alistair. That's what I do for fun." "I don't care what you do," Alistair blustered, though his confidence was starting to crack. "Captain, why are you entertaining this delusion?" "Remove her." Captain Harrison took a step toward Alistair. The captain was a tall man, and for the first time Alistair felt small. "Mr. Kensington," Harrison said sharply, "I need you to sit down and be quiet. Immediately." "Don't you dare talk to me like that," Alistair snarled. "I know the owner of this airline. I'm going to have your badge. I'm going to have your pension." The cabin went silent. Even the air conditioning seemed to stop humming. Marion let out a short, dark laugh. She reached into her hoodie pocket and pulled out a lanyard. It wasn't a ticket. It was a security badge. It was black gold and heavy. It had the highest clearance level possible stamped on it: global, all access. "You know the owner?" Marion asked softly. She took a step closer to Alistair. "Alistair, you said you fly this route twice a month. You said you know the CEO. You said you know the VP of operations." "I do," Alistair lied, sweating now. "I play golf with Bill." "There is no Bill," Marion said. "The VP of operations is named Seraphine Jane. And the CEO," she paused. "The CEO is my father, Antoine Dubois. He founded this airline 30 years ago." Alistair's mouth opened, but no sound came out. "But here is the twist, Alistair." Marion continued, her voice gaining strength, echoing through the first-class cabin. "My father retired 6 months ago. He transferred the controlling interest of the European fleet to the holding company." She pointed to the floor. "To this holding company." Alistair looked around, panic setting in. So what you're the daughter that doesn't mean I'm not just the daughter." Marion cut him off. The tension in the cabin was sharp enough to cut glass. Seraphine, the flight attendant, was pressed against the galley wall, watching the scene unfold with wide eyes. She knew what was coming. She had been waiting for someone to put Alistair Kensington in his place for years. Captain Harrison cleared his throat. He looked at Alistair with a mixture of pity and professional severity. "Mr. Kensington," the captain said, "the passenger you have been harassing for the last hour. The passenger you called street culture and a stowaway." Harrison gestured to Marion with an open hand. "This is Marion Dubois. She is the chairwoman of the board for Dubois Aviation Group. She owns the leasing firm that holds the title to this specific aircraft." The silence that followed was absolute. Alistair blinked. His brain was trying to process the information, but his ego was rejecting it like a bad organ transplant. She owns," Alistair stammered. He looked at Marion's hoodie. He looked at her braids. He looked at her sneakers. "No, that's impossible. Look at her. She looks like a black student." Marion finished the sentence for him. Her voice was ice cold. "Yes, Alistair. I am black. I am a student. And I am also the woman who signs the checks that pay for the fuel in this plane, the scotch in your glass, and the salary of the captain you just threatened." Marion took a step forward. Alistair took a step back, bumping into the bulkhead. "You said I was in the wrong seat," Marion said, her voice rising slightly, filled with the authority she had been hiding. "You were right. I am in the wrong seat. Because technically, Alistair, I own every single seat on this plane. I own the cockpit. I own the galley. I own the air you are breathing right now inside this pressurized hull." "Sir," Captain Harrison added, delivering the final blow, "she owns this aircraft." Alistair's face went from red to a sickly shade of white. He looked at the captain, looking for a sign that this was a prank. It wasn't. He looked at the other passengers. The man in 2B was filming the entire thing on his phone. "Put that away!" Alistair shrieked at the man in 2B swiping at the air. "Leave him alone," Marion commanded. Her voice was no longer soft. It was the voice of a CEO. "Sit down, Alistair. Now wait a minute." Alistair tried to pivot his voice, trembling, switching from aggression to a pathetic attempt at negotiation. "Ms. Dubois, Marion, I didn't know. Obviously, if I had known who you were, I would have showed proper respect. We are both business people. You understand stress. I have a merger. A merger, Marion repeated. Kensington Logistics, right? Alistair froze. How do you know my company? Marion pulled out her phone. She tapped the screen a few times. When you were screaming at your assistant earlier, you were quite loud. You mentioned you needed liquidity by Monday. You're selling the transatlantic shipping division to shore up your stock price. Alistair nodded dumbly. Yes, it's a standard move. Strategic. And who is the buyer? Marion asked, a small, dangerous smile playing on her lips. Alistair swallowed hard. A private equity firm in Zurich. Centurion Holdings. Marion nodded. She turned the phone screen toward him. It was an email chain. Read the header, Alistair. Alistair squinted at the screen. The email was from the CEO of Centurion Holdings. But the CC line went to M. Dubois, DuboisCapital.com. Centurion is a subsidiary of my family office, Marion said casually. We are the ones buying your debt. We are the ones buying your company. The world seemed to drop out from under Alistair's feet. He wasn't just insulting a passenger. He wasn't just insulting the owner of the plane. He had just spent an hour racially abusing the woman who held his financial life in her hands. No, Alistair whispered. No. Please. You said you wanted to educate me on my place in the world, Marion said, her voice hard as steel. You told me I would never be one of us. You were right, Alistair. I'm not one of you, because I don't treat people like garbage just because I have money. She looked at Captain Harrison. Captain, I don't feel safe flying with this passenger. His erratic behavior, his aggression and his verbal abuse suggest he is a flight risk. I believe he is a threat to the safety of the crew and myself. I agree, Ms. Dubois, Captain Harrison said immediately. Wait, Alistair pleaded, holding up his hands. We are in the air. You can't just kick me off. We are over the ocean. Actually, Harrison checked his watch. We are currently passing over Halifax. We have plenty of fuel to divert. Divert? Alistair screamed. You can't divert a commercial 707 just for this. Think of the cost. The fuel. The other passengers. Marion looked at the other passengers. Ladies and gentlemen, she raised her voice. If we divert to drop off this abusive man, I will personally refund everyone's ticket and provide a $5,000 travel voucher for the delay. Does anyone object to getting rid of him? Dump him, the man in 2B shouted. Get him off, a woman in row 3 yelled. Marion turned back to Alistair. It seems the shareholders have spoken. She looked at the captain. Captain Harrison, divert the aircraft to Halifax Stanfield International Airport. Have the RCMP Royal Canadian Mounted Police waiting at the gate. I want to press charges for harassment and interference with a flight crew. Understood, Ms. Dubois, Harrison said. He turned and marched back into the cockpit. The door clicked shut. Alistair collapsed into seat 1B. He looked small. He looked broken. You can't do this, he whimpered. My meeting. Monday morning. If I miss it. If you miss it, Marion said, sitting back down in seat 1A and putting her headphones back around her neck. The deal falls through. Your stock crashes. And Kensington Logistics probably goes bankrupt. She picked up her tablet and opened her thermodynamics textbook. You really should have just eaten your lobster and shut up, Alistair. The plane banked sharply to the left. They were turning around. The descent into Halifax Stanfield International Airport was rough. The weather in Nova Scotia was unforgiving grey rain, lashing against the windows, a stark contrast to the sterile luxury of the cabin. But the turbulence outside was nothing compared to the storm raging inside Alistair Kensington's mind. For the 40 minutes it took to divert and land, Alistair sat in silence. He didn't drink his scotch. He didn't look at his phone. He stared at the seatback in front of him, his face a mask of sweating, twitching anxiety. He was running the numbers in his head, trying to find an escape hatch. Maybe he could sue the airline. Maybe he could claim a medical emergency. Maybe he could bribe the police. But every time he glanced to his left, he saw Marion. She wasn't looking at him. She was calm, collected, chatting quietly with Seraphine, the flight attendant, about her coursework. The dynamic had shifted so violently that the air pressure in the cabin felt different. Marion was no longer the intruder. She was the queen in her castle, and Alistair was the jester who had told the wrong joke. The wheels touched down with a heavy thud, the reverse thrusters roaring like dragons. The 707 taxied to a remote stand, not a gate. This was a bad boy parking spot, far away from the terminal where security incidents were handled, away from the public eye. The captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Halifax. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. Local authorities are boarding the aircraft to remove a passenger. Once that is complete, we will refuel and continue to Zurich. Thank you for your patience." Alistair unbuckled his seatbelt before the plane even stopped. He stood up, grabbing his briefcase. "Sit down, Mr. Kensington," Seraphine said sharply. She was no longer the polite server. She was a safety officer, and she was done with him. "I need to use the restroom," Alistair lied, his eyes darting around. "Sit down." It wasn't Seraphine who spoke this time. It was Marion. She didn't shout. She just said it with the weight of ownership. Alistair sat. The forward cabin door opened. A blast of cold, wet Canadian air rushed in, smelling of jet fuel and rain. 2 officers from the RCMP, Royal Canadian Mounted Police, stepped on board. They were big men, wearing dark navy uniforms and yellow reflective vests. They didn't look like they cared about stock prices or Savile Row suits. Captain Harrison met them at the door, pointing directly at seat 1B. The officers walked down the aisle. The silence in the cabin was suffocating. Every passenger in first class and the curious heads poking through the curtain from business class watched. "Alistair Kensington?" the lead officer asked. His name tag read Officer Miller. Alistair stood up, trying to summon the last shreds of his dignity. He smoothed his jacket. "Officers, thank God you're here. I want to report a hijacking. This woman," he pointed at Marion, "has commanded the pilot to divert against my will. I am an American citizen, and I demand—" "Sir," Officer Miller cut him off. His voice was bored, unimpressed. "We have a statement from the captain and 3 flight attendants regarding an air rage incident. You are being detained for interfering with a flight crew and causing a disturbance." "Disturbance," Alistair's voice cracked. "I was expressing a consumer complaint." "Turn around and place your hands behind your back," Miller said, pulling out a pair of handcuffs. "You cannot handcuff me," Alistair shrieked, pulling his hands away. "Do you know who I am? I am the CEO of Kensington Logistics. I have a meeting in Zurich that is worth $500 million. "Well, you're going to be late," the second officer said, grabbing Alistair's wrist with a grip like a vice. They spun him around. The sound of the handcuffs ratcheting shut, click, 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 was the loudest sound in the world. As they began to march him toward the door, the passenger in seat 2B, the young man Alistair had tried to recruit as an ally earlier, stood up. He held his phone out, camera rolling. "Hey, Alistair," the man called out. Alistair looked up, his face red and wet with sweat. "Say hi to Twitter," the man said. "There are 40,000 people watching the live stream right now." Alistair's eyes went wide. "What? I started streaming when you called her a stowaway," the man grinned. "You're trending, buddy. #1 in the US, #3 worldwide. The hashtag is #HatFirstClassRacist." Alistair looked at the phone screen. He saw the cascade of comments flying by at light speed. End him. Imagine losing your company because you hate hoodies. Marion Dubois is my hero. Boycott Kensington Logistics. "Turn it off," Alistair screamed, lunging at the phone, but the officers yanked him back. "Move it," Officer Miller barked, shoving Alistair toward the door. Alistair looked back one last time at seat 1A. Marion hadn't moved. She hadn't stood up to gloat. She was just watching him, her expression one of mild disappointment, like a teacher watching a student fail a test they should have passed. "Marion!" Alistair yelled, desperation taking over. "Marion, please, call them off. I'll do anything. I'll public apologize. Just let me stay on the plane." Marion picked up her glass of sparkling water. She took a sip. "Goodbye, Mr. Kensington," she said softly. "I hope you enjoy Halifax. I hear the lobster is excellent." The officers hauled him out into the rain. The door slammed shut. Inside the cabin for a second, there was silence. Then from the back of the plane, from the economy section, where news had filtered back, a slow clap started. It built row by row until the entire aircraft was erupting in applause. Marion didn't bow. She just put her noise-cancelling headphones back on, opened her textbook, and went back to work. Alistair Kensington spent the next 6 hours in a holding cell at the airport detachment of the RCMP. It was a concrete box with a metal bench and a toilet that smelled of bleach. They had taken his shoelaces, his belt, and his tie. He looked like a ruin of a man. Finally, at 4:00 a.m. local time, he was allowed his one phone call. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely dial. He didn't call his wife. He didn't call his lawyer. He called Julian, his chief financial officer and right-hand man back in New York. The phone rang 4 times. "Hello." Julian's voice was ragged. He sounded like he hadn't slept in a week. "Julian," Alistair rasped. "It's me. It's a disaster. A misunderstanding. I'm in Canada. Get the legal team. Get the jet ready to pick me up. I can still make the Zurich meeting if we leave in 2 hours." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Alistair," Julian said. His voice was dead. "You don't understand." "What don't I understand?" "I know it's bad, but we can spin it. Issue a press release. Say I had a reaction to medication. Say I was stressed." "Alistair, stop," Julian snapped. "It's over." Alistair blinked at the concrete wall. "What do you mean it's over?" "The video," Julian said. "It has 10 million views. 10 million, Alistair. It's on CNN. It's on the BBC. Anderson Cooper is doing a segment on it right now. They have a lip reader breaking down exactly what you said to that girl. So it's bad PR. We'll weather it." "The board just finished an emergency meeting," Julian said. Alistair felt his stomach drop. "The board met without me. They voted Alistair. It was unanimous. They triggered the moral turpitude clause in your contract. You're fired, effective immediately." Alistair slid down the wall until he hit the floor. They can't do that. I built that company." "They did it," Julian said. "But that's not even the worst part. What could possibly be worse? The stock," Julian whispered. "When the video hit the Asian markets opened, Kensington Logistics KLOG dropped 40% in pre-market trading. The creditors got spooked. They called in the loans, Alistair. All of them. We have zero liquidity. But the deal, Alistair shouted into the phone. The Centurion deal in Zurich. That was supposed to save us. Call them. Tell them the meeting is still on. I did call them, Julian said, about 20 minutes ago. And they pulled the offer. Alistair closed his eyes. They pulled it. Not exactly, Julian corrected himself. They changed the terms. They sent over a new term sheet about 5 minutes ago. It's brutal, Alistair. It's a hostile takeover. They're offering pennies on the dollar. They're buying the assets, the ships, the warehouses, but they're stripping the brand. The name Kensington is toxic. They're going to dissolve the entity. Who? Alistair whispered. Who is doing this? Centurion, Julian said. But the email didn't come from the Zurich team. It came from the parent company. Dubois Capital. Alistair said the name, tasting like poison. Yes, and there was a personal note attached for you. Alistair swallowed hard. Read it. Julian hesitated. Alistair, I don't think... Read it, Alistair screamed. Julian sighed. It says, Dear Mr. Kensington, we have reviewed your asset portfolio. While your management style is obsolete, your ships are still useful. We will be acquiring your company at the liquidation price of $400 per share. Please consider this the cost of your education. Regards, Marion. Alistair dropped the phone. It dangled by its metal cord, swinging back and forth against the wall. 4 Huns a share. Yesterday it was trading at $7,800. He was ruined. His equity was worthless. His golden parachute was gone because he was fired for cause. He wasn't just unemployed. He was a pariah. He sat on the cold concrete floor of a Canadian jail cell, realizing the full extent of his mistake. He had looked at a young black woman in a hoodie and seen nothing. He had seen a zero. He didn't realize that zero was actually a circle. The circle of a jet engine. The circle of a global network. The circle of karma coming back around to crush him. Back at 35,000 feet, Flight 882 was cruising smoothly toward Zurich. The sun was rising over the Atlantic, painting the clouds in gold and violet. Seraphine walked down the aisle with a fresh glass of sparkling water. She placed it on Marion's tray table. Breakfast will be served in an hour, Ms. Dubois, Seraphine said with a genuine smile. Can I get you anything else? Marion looked up from her tablet. She had just sent an email to her acquisitions team, confirming the purchase of a distressed logistics firm. No, thank you, Seraphine. Marion smiled. I have everything I need. She looked out the window at the sunrise. The world looked bright, the world looked clean, and for the first time in a long time, the skies felt friendly. The fall of Alistair Kensington was not a graceful slide. It was a vertical drop without a parachute. When Alistair was finally released from the RCMP detention center in Halifax, 24 hours later, he didn't walk out into anonymity. He walked out into a blinding storm of camera flashes. The video from Flight 882 hadn't just gone viral. It had become a global symbol of entitlement versus merit. The hashtag #HadFirstClassRacist was no longer just a trend. It was a headline on the ticker of Times Square. Alistair shielded his face with his empty briefcase. The police had kept his shoelaces and belt, as per protocol. So he shuffled toward the exit with his expensive trousers bunching around his ankles, looking less like a titan of industry and more like a vagrant in a suit. He tried to hail a cab, but the moment the driver recognized him, from the news loop playing on his phone, he locked the doors and drove away. Alistair was stranded in the rain, a prelude to the isolation that would define the rest of his life. The destruction of his world happened with terrifying speed. Upon his return to New York, via a humiliating rental car drive because he had been placed on the immediate no-fly list by 3 major airline alliances, he found that the locks to his Upper East Side townhouse had been changed. His wife, Eleanor, a woman who valued social standing above oxygen, had filed for divorce before his plane had even touched the tarmac in Halifax. Her lawyers were ruthless. They argued that Alistair's public disgrace had caused irreparable damage to the family reputation, effectively freezing his personal assets. But the true death blow came from the boardroom. 3 days after the incident, Marion Dubois walked into the headquarters of Kensington Logistics in Jersey City. She wasn't wearing a hoodie this time. She was wearing a tailored black power suit that cost more than Alistair's car. She was flanked by Julian Alistair's former CFO and a team of auditors from Dubois Capital. She didn't take the elevator to the conference room. She went straight to the corner office, Alistair's sanctuary. The room still smelled of his stale cigars and arrogance. Marion walked over to the heavy oak desk, picked up the nameplate that read Alistair Kensington, CEO, and dropped it into the wastebasket. She turned to the terrified executive assistants and junior managers gathering in the hallway. They were bracing for mass layoffs. They expected the hatchet woman to come in and strip the company for parts. "Good morning," Marion said, her voice projecting clear and calm across the floor. "My name is Marion Dubois. As of this morning, I am the majority shareholder of this entity. I know you are worried about your jobs." She paused, making eye contact with a young woman in the front row who was clutching a notepad nervously. Alistair Kensington treated this company like his personal piggy bank and its people like furniture. Marion continued, "That ends today. We are not liquidating the staff. We are liquidating the toxicity. If you are a hard worker, you have a raise coming. If you are here because you were Alistair's golf buddy, you have 10 minutes to clear your desk." A cheer went up from the bullpen that could be heard in the lobby. In one afternoon, Marion didn't just buy a company. She won an army. She rebranded the firm Phoenix Logistics, signaling a rise from the ashes of Alistair's failure. Under her leadership, efficiency tripled within the quarter, proving that treating people with dignity is actually a superior business strategy. As for Alistair, the universe was thorough in its correction. 6 months later, the winter had set in. In a grimy Greyhound bus terminal in Newark, New Jersey, a man sat on a plastic bench with a torn seat. He was wearing a faded windbreaker and jeans that were too loose for him. The stress had caused him to lose 30 pounds. Alistair Kensington checked his watch, a cheap digital replacement for the Rolex that had been auctioned off to pay his legal fees. He was waiting for the 4:15 p.m. bus to Scranton, where his brother had reluctantly agreed to let him sleep on a pull-out couch in the basement. He was thirsty. He walked over to the vending machine and punched in the code for a bottle of water. The machine whirred, the coil turned, but the bottle got stuck, dangling precariously against the glass. Alistair stared at it. The old Alistair would have screamed. He would have kicked the machine. He would have demanded to speak to the manager of the bus station. But this Alistair just sighed. He didn't have the energy to fight anymore. He didn't have the status to demand a refund. He was just another passenger in the economy class of life, subject to the same bad luck and inconveniences as everyone else. A young man sitting nearby wearing a college hoodie and listening to music saw the bottle get stuck. He saw the defeat in the older man's shoulders. The young man stood up, walked over and bought a soda from the slot above. The heavy bottle fell, knocking Alistair's water loose in the process. Both bottles tumbled into the retrieval bin. The young man handed the water to Alistair. "Here you go, man. Rough day." Alistair took the cold plastic bottle. His hands shook slightly. He looked at the young man, black, wearing a hoodie, headphones around his neck. It was the exact image of the street culture he had despised at 30,000 feet. Tears pricked Alistair's eyes. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice cracking. "You have no idea." "No worries," the kid smiled, adjusting his backpack. "We're all just trying to get somewhere, right?" The kid walked away to catch his bus. Alistair stood there, clutching the water, finally understanding the lesson. It wasn't about the seat you sat in. It was about how you treated the person sitting next to you. Meanwhile, high above the clouds, Flight 882 was making its daily run to Zurich. The new cabin crew had a standing order from the owner. They called it the Dubois Protocol. It was simple: treat every single passenger from seat 1A to seat 55 as if they owned the plane. Because, as Marion proved, you never truly know who you are talking to. Alistair Kensington boarded his bus, taking a seat in the back near the bathroom. As the engine roared to life and the smell of diesel filled the air, he leaned his head against the cold window and watched the planes taking off from Newark Airport in the distance, climbing higher and higher into the sky where he used to live. And that is the story of how one man's arrogance cost him everything, and how one woman's silence spoke louder than a scream. It's a powerful reminder that in today's world, you cannot judge someone's value by their clothes, their age, or their skin color. Alistair Kensington learned the hard way that the nobody you mock today might be the person signing your paycheck or buying your company tomorrow. What would you have done if you were in Marion's shoes? Would you have revealed your identity sooner? Or would you have let him dig his own grave, just like she did? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If you believe in karma and justice being served, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you want to hear more incredible stories about instant regret and real-life revenge, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss a video. Thanks for watching, and remember, be humble or life will do it for you. See you in the next one.